Hi, and welcome to Three Questions with. I'm my buddy Patrick with us from Dalton and Finegold. Good afternoon, Patrick. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start at the beginning? Let's talk a little bit about your practice. Tell us what area you practice in.
So I'm a partner at Dalton and Finegold. I'm based out of their Andover offices, but we have offices all over kind of the greater Boston area and southern New Hampshire. And for me, my practice focuses mainly on litigation. So I'm housed in our firm's litigation department, but I also expand my practice areas to just kind of general business and corporate law. So everything from entity formations through management and operating agreements. The goal of that area of my practice is to be that outsourced general counsel for the small business that really only needs the attorney one to three times a year to review a contract or revise an agreement and things like that.
I really love that. It's interesting, Patrick. As you know, I teach, and we talk about partnerships and partnership agreements. And my students look at me funny when I'm like, "You need to have an agreement." They're like, "But Kev, Patrick's my friend." I'm like, "I know, and you want him to keep being your friend." So partnership agreements are really important that you establish that before you go forward, right?
Absolutely. And I think a big part of it is making sure that everyone gets on the same page from the very beginning, because like that's the time when people are more willing to agree on kind of the long-term plans for the business. Your operating agreement or partnership agreement becomes your playbook. So early on is the time to kind of get everyone on the same page going forward. And it's hard to kind of if 2 or 3 years into the business things are going south, that's a difficult time to have the conversations about what happens if someone wants to leave the group or retire or sell their portions of their ownership interest in the entity. So it's essential to have that conversation from the start so everyone knows what the plan is going forward.
Makes sense. You mentioned contracts. I think that's super important too, Patrick, because sometimes I just don't catch the fine print of the contract. I'm like, "Oh, this sounds great." And then you're like, "Well, Kev, you signed the contract." Then at the bottom, it said this. You're like, "I missed it." Anything even semi-important, it's worth it to have you review it to make sure I'm not making a bad call, right?
Absolutely. And that's part of the role of the contract review. And like there are times where a contract can be, depending on what the purpose of the contract is and the intended purpose of the relationship going forward, there are times where there's going to be a lot of material terms of the contract that can be negotiable and things like that. But there are times that if you're working with a large vendor, this is their standard form contract, and you're not really going to have much wiggle room to negotiate the ins and outs. But having someone that can review it and kind of provide you an overview of what the risks are for that contract, so that you know what you're getting into is helpful, so that you don't get caught off guard by the like late fees, or if there's disputes and there's attorney's fees provisions and things like that that are just increased costs that you don't think about when you sign the contract, because you're assuming that everything's going to go right. My job is to think about what can go wrong and kind of make sure that you're prepared for that going forward.
Speaking about when things go wrong, sometimes litigation is necessary. You just can't agree. Someone's not paying you, someone violated the contract. But it's really important to reach out to you to find out what your options are before you start trying to threaten people or, take action. That makes sense?
Absolutely. And that's something that here at Dalton and Finegold, we have a litigation team that can support the business needs. Every litigation intake, my job is to help you define what the win is with the dispute. And that can change over time as you kind of go through what could be the initial demand phase of litigation through actually filing suit. And based on kind of the nature of litigation, suits can go a matter of years, and you can get up there in costs into the tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, depending on kind of what the matter is. So defining the win at essential points in the litigation is going to be a conversation that I have with all my clients, and it's trying to figure out what the best resolution is for the client at the time.
I really like that, Patrick, because sometimes you just have to have that honest talk. Kev, you're really getting all upset over $5,000, and sure, I can help you, but you're going to pay me $12.
And that's a big part of it, it's a lot of the conversation is about whether the juice is worth the squeeze, and litigation litigation fatigue is a very real thing. I have matters that were filed 3-4 years ago that are still ongoing, and that's when I do the intake. Those are kind of it might sound like I'm trying to convince you not to do litigation, but that's really kind of what my role is, to make sure that you are fully aware of the risks going forward. Because like there's components that you might feel that you've been wronged at the performance of the contract, but if you haven't properly performed, there could be counterclaims against you, and once the complaint is filed and there are counterclaims against you, you can't pick your ball up and leave. You gotta pursue the matter until the parties either resolve it or it's brought to judgment. There are pros and cons to, or there are a lot of factors that need to be weighed in whether or not you want to go forward in litigation. And I'm here to advise and provide you with as much information as possible so that the client can make the best informed decision as possible.
So Patrick, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? How can they learn more then, my friend?
So people can always email me. I'm available. My email is pheffernan@dfllp.com. I'm also available for contact on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Patrick, I appreciate you taking a couple minutes to call the show. And as always, thanks for being my friend.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.